Hello everyone, this is Julia. Thank you so much for joining me on my craft room adventures. Today, I have a box card to share with you using Lawn Fawn stamps and dies. First, I started out by stamping all of my images onto Neenah Solar White cardstock, and the stamp sets I'm using are Butterfly Kisses, that are the little fox and the bear, and the rest of the images are from birthday before and afters. I'm just using Copic markers to color them in. For the fox, I'm using E11 and E15, going in with my darkest shade first, blending it out with the E11, then going in a second time with the E15, and then blending it out with the E11. I'm also using a little bit of R20 for the cheeks, and for the tail, the face, and the little belly, I'm using WOO. For those of you that already followed me, this card may actually seem familiar to you, at least regarding the colors and critters. My friend, as part of our Challenge a Crafty Friend on Instagram, challenged me to case one of my own cards that I've previously made and turn this card into a box card, which was harder than I thought it was gonna be, but I do like how it turned out, so that's why the design is fairly similar, because it was a challenge. Now for the little bear, I'm using E50 markers. I'm going in with my E53 as my darkest shade, my midtone is E51, and my lightest shade is E50. As usual, I'm leaving the lightest colors completely white until I'm ready to color in the entire critter, just to make sure there's enough of a difference between the darkest and lightest shade, because the E53 isn't actually that dark. Again, using the W00 for the belly and the R20 for the inside of the ears and the cheeks. Just blending those out with the E50. Now for the cake, I'm using E30 markers, E35 for my darkest shade, E33, and then E31. I'm just going in with the darkest shade, blending out with a midtone, then going back in with the darkest, again with a midtone, and then going in with the lightest. Now it's time to add my yellows. For the beak and the candles on the birthday cake, I'm using YR23, YR20, and Y11. And for the birdie, I'm using Y21 as my darkest shade, Y11, and then blending out with Y00. Also giving him some cheeks with the R20 again. Now I'm switching to my red combos. For the little beads on the cake, I'm using R29 as my darkest shade, and R22 and R20. And for the icing on the cake, I'm using a tiny little bit of R22, because I just wanted a bit of a shadow below the candles, and then blending it out with R20, then R00, and then finally R000. I'm also using a similar color combination for my first gift box, which is the R22, then blending out with the R20, and then the ROO, and also the ROO. Going in with the second layer, using quite a bit more of the R22 because I wanted the color to be more intense. Also pulling the R20 down a bit further, and then going in with the ROO and R000. For my greens, I'm using G000 and G00. Just going in with the G00 as my darkest shade, and then the G000, as my highlight. just giving it a little bit of shading. Now I'm going in with some purples. I'm using V000, V01, and RV63. I'm using it for the ribbon. I'm using RV63 and V01 on the underside of the ribbon because that would be darker. And I'm using the V000 on the top side of the ribbon just to make sure that part is lighter. I'm also using the same combo on the stripes on the little party hat and on my first ribbon. Just going in with the RV63 first, blending out with my midtone the V01 and then the V000. As before, doing 2 coats or 2 layers just to get the color nice and smoothly blended. And finally, I'm going in with some teal shades. For the candles and the little bunting on the cake, I'm using BG13 and BG11. And for the gift box and the ribbon, I'm using BG49, BG13, and BG11. I'm using the BG49 pretty sparingly because that is quite a bit darker than the BG13, but I do like that it adds quite a bit of depth. I used the exact same combination on my last gift box and also on the party hat, so I'm not going to show the coloring. I just colored it exactly the same way as I did the ribbon. Now I'm just using a gel pen to add some interest to some of the gift elements. I'm just adding some stripes to the box and just random polka dots on the gift boxes and ribbons. Now I'm just using some Nouveau Crystal Glaze Shimmer Pen on all the elements that don't have gel pen, except for the 2 critters, of course. And I'm doing this beforehand this time, actually. Usually I do it when the card is finished, but since it's a box card, I always find it really hard to add details when the images are adhered, so I just went ahead and did it now. Now it's time to ink blend. I die cut the pieces for the decorative pieces for the scalloped box card, and I'm just using tumbled glass and salty ocean distress oxide on Bristol smooth cardstock to ink blend those tiny little panels. Now I'm just adding in the salty ocean. I'm doing it on all of the panels because I didn't want the salty ocean to completely take over the tumbled glass, so I'm just using the darkest shade, the salty ocean first, then wiping off my brush, and then blending the colors. I die cut the inside hill panels twice for the box card, and I'm ink blending those with Twisted Citron and Mowed Lawn. And I also die cut some decorative grassy hills with the same dies as I did before, just with the stitched hillside, or simple stitched hillside borders. And I'm just ink blending those. This is the second hill. No, this was the first, this is the second. Now I'm just adding more ink onto my mat, adding some water, placing all of my elements onto my water media mat, and I'm just using a brush to add lots of splatters, as I did on my previous card. And now it's time to start assembling my card. I die cut the main piece of the scallop box card twice out of white cardstock, and I also cut a piece for the background to just glue in. I added the decorative pieces, the long one and two of the square ones, and two inside pieces, and I also die cut the matching hills. I added score tape to the flaps, and now I'm just reinforcing all of the score lines that the die creates. Just using my bone folder to make sure it's all moving nicely. I removed the backing of the score tape from the first flap. I'm just butting up the two pieces next to each other, aligning them, and then pressing down firmly and reinforcing it with my bone folder. Now it's time to add the inside pieces. This is my first time actually properly assembling one of these, so I wasn't quite sure how high up I needed the hill to go. I wanted to see if that looks alright, but I did realize that it needed to be basically flush with the edge of the box to look right. Adding in the second one, removing the backing paper, lining it up with the edge, and then I'm just folding them over, removing the backing paper, and I'm closing the left side onto the adhesive, pushing down firmly, removing the backing paper on the other side, and just closing the card. And that is the basic mechanism. I'm just moving it to the left and to the right to make sure it moves nicely. Now I'm using the Happy Birthday from the Birthday Before and Afters. I just used some Versamark ink, and now I'm using the Wow embossing powder in opaque bright white superfine. Off to the side, my heat gun was already heating up, and now I'm just heating up the powder until it's smooth and melted. Now it's time to assemble my little decorative outside seams for the flaps of the box. Just adding liquid glue to the hills. And I also added some clouds. I cut out most of it because it's just basically gluing down clouds. I also added a third hill to the inside of the box because I thought it was just too low in the background. Just added that with liquid glue, and now I'm also using lots more clouds. The tiny clouds are from the Center Picture window card, in case you're wondering. Now I'm adding the decorative flap pieces, just using an acrylic block to hold it down while the glue dries. Now it's time to add the third. And there we go. Now I'm just adding my images. I knew I wanted the cake to be in the center of the second hill, so I just added that in first. Just making sure it's at the right height. Using my reverse tweezers to hold it in place while the glue dries. Now I'm adding the fox to the left and the little bear to the right. Always just holding it in place for a few seconds with my reverse tweezers to make sure it doesn't move. And I'm also adding adhesive only to the very bottom of the images, just to make sure that there's no adhesive sticking out, so that I don't end up accidentally gluing my box shut. Now I'm just adding the little chick popping out of the gift box to the first hill. And for the two presents, I wasn't quite sure. I was thinking of adding them to the side panels, but I decided to add them to the background. Just trying to glue them between the cake and the critters. just so you can barely see them when you see them peek through in the background. I also added a tiny little party hat, and I die cut the other decorative pieces to cover the outside of the box, just out of some light blue cardstock. That finishes off our card for today. I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. Bye!